Resuming debate, the honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to thank the honourable member from Avalon for bringing this incredibly important issue into the floor of the House of Commons. I think it goes without saying that this issue of long-term care is perhaps, along with the cost of living, one of the most heard about issues from concerned constituents from all members of all this place. My riding of Hastings, Lennox and Addington has one of the highest percentages of seniors in this country. Couple that statistic with the rural nature of a large majority of the riding, and the issue of housing suitable for seniors is a real issue. Not only do we need to make sure enough beds exist in facilities, we need to ensure that those facilities are spread throughout the riding to accommodate the decentralized population centres across the thousands of kilometres of HLNA. Many of my rural counterparts don't benefit from having the centralized, smaller footprints that our urban colleagues do, which means much more costly overhead in terms of capital and staff in getting our facilities set up. While this is certainly daunting, recently, Hastings, Lennox and Addington served as a good example of how the provinces can start the process on their own. Recently, the Ontario government announced $1.8 million in additional funding for long-term care facilities in HLNA and Kingston and the Islands. This affects over 500 beds across these two ridings. And I'm sure my colleague from Kingston would be happy to join me in thanking the Conservative government of Doug Ford for this very important investment in long-term care across our riding.
Hear, hear.
While this is certainly a positive step in the right direction, far more work needs to be done in Hastings, Lennox and Addington and across our country. The reality of the situation is that the COVID-19 pandemic shed a jarring light on the problem that has been festering in Canada for decades. It was the dirty little secret that millions of Canadians did not want to acknowledge, that many of their parents were living in dismal conditions in our long-term care facilities. In my opinion, the most eye-opening example of this was when the Ontario and Quebec governments called in the military to provide logistical support for their overworked caregivers named Operation Laser. Following their deployment, the Canadian Armed Forces released a report that contained 5 annexes titled Observational Reports that chronicled concerning shortcomings at 5 long-term care facilities that were further exacerbated by COVID-19. Madam Speaker, I do want to apologize to my colleagues for the graphic nature that much in that report holds, but I believe that as someone responsible for the seniors portfolio, it is incumbent of me to remind the House of the contents of the report and read it into the record. I do want to reiterate that while the following excerpts are, for lack of a better term, horrific, they are not indicative of all facilities. However, the fact that these situations occurred at all, even if they were to be isolated instances, is one time too many. In the first facility, the report noted, among many, many other issues, the following. Reusing hypodermal crisis supplies even after sterility has been obviously compromised. Example, the catheter pulled out and on the floor for an undetermined amount of time. Poor palliative care standards. Inadequate dosing intervals for some medications. Generally, very poor pericatheterization care reported. Example, retracting penis foreskin to clean isn't happening on a widespread level. CAF have found nearly a dozen instances of bleeding fungal infections. Extra soaker pad. Residents who routinely soil their bed despite incontinence products are not permitted to have an extra soaker pad or towel to help protect sheets and blankets from soiling, and the rationalization used is that the extra pad is undignified. New staff that have been brought to long-term care facilities haven't been trained or oriented. Long-term care facility is severely understaffed during the day due to resident comorbidities and needs. Medical doctors not present and have to be accessed by phone. CAF members have witnessed aggressive behavior, which ACC staff assessed as abusive and inappropriate. Madam Speaker, in a second facility, little to no disinfection has been conducted at the facilities prior to the CAF operations. Significant gross fecal contamination was noted in numerous patient rooms. Insect infestation noted within long-term care facilities, ants and cockroaches plus unknown observed. Delayed change in soil residence leading to skin breakdown. Forceful feeding observed by staff caused audible choking and aspiration. Forceful hydration caused audible choking and aspiration. Patients observed crying for help with no staff responding for up to 30 minutes to over 2 hours. The SNO report reported incidents of patients' enteral feed bottle not being changed for as long as the contents had become foul and coagulated, date and expiration of contents not noted on the bottle. The SNO report incidents of permanent catheter being in situ 3 weeks beyond scheduled change date. Personal service worker
Des préposés aux bénéficiaires qui étaient pressés, qui laissaient des aliments sur la table que les patients ne pouvaient pas atteindre, alors ils rataient des repas. Madame la Présidente, il s'agit seulement d'une petite partie du rapport portant sur 2 établissements. C'est effarant. Et le même genre de choses se reproduisent partout au pays et durent depuis des décennies. Ici, on semble se contenter de traiter nos aînés, ceux qui ont construit notre pays, ceux qui ont façonné notre pays. On ne les traite pas mieux que des animaux. C'est une...
Consider the previously mentioned incidents as part of regular life. As I have previously mentioned in this House, in 2018, the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities released a report titled Advancing Inclusion and Quality of Life for Seniors. That report identified a number of issues surrounding long-term care and suggested a number of actionable recommendations to address those issues. It is extremely unfortunate that over 4 years later, Madam Speaker, we are still moving motions to crassly declare our great outrage over an issue this Parliament was directly made aware of at the same time, but not moving fast enough to address the very same issue. But then again, unfortunately, this seems to be the modus operandi of this government. To move on a non-instructive motion, develop a framework, strike a working group, create a roadmap, do anything except actually address the issue at hand. Madam Speaker, this year's budget is another perfect example of this mentality. Despite all of the grandstanding from this government about this government's having the backs of our seniors, they provided $20 million in their support for seniors budget line. $20 million out of $56.6 billion in proposed new spending. To put that into perspective, Madam Speaker, for every dollar this government has proposed to spend, Canadian seniors get less than half of a tenth of a cent. Yikes. To finish off, I'd like to reiterate, I'm not assigning blame to my honourable friend across the way who moved this very important motion, but more so to his colleagues on the front bench who dither away while our Canadian seniors are suffering. I want to thank you. I really do. I want to thank you for bringing this motion to the floor. And I hope that you will continue, I hope that he will continue to advocate for Canadian seniors and press his caucus colleagues into meaningful action on this file. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Reprise des